I will do everything in my power to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon.
Iran has not lived up to the spirit of the agreement.
I could have wiped Iran off the map.
Iran is a threat.
Iran just re-elected.
Iran's arms program.
Iran.
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 This is the story of the Iranian citizens and their struggle to gain democracy and freedom. On December 12, 1925, Reza Khan was declared the Shah of Iran and established the Pahlavi dynasty. Iran immediately took massive strides towards westernization. The influx of new culture gave the population new freedoms and privileges they never had before. Reza Khan was succeeded by Mohammad Reza Shah, his oldest son, in 1941. The new Shah had a bright vision for the country and was destined to modernize Iran to its full potential. In the next few decades, he would transform Iran into an industrial nation. He was supported by the United States, Great Britain, and various other Western nations. In 1963, the new Shah implemented what he called the White Revolution, a reform program that focused on an increase in modernization. But this also resulted in a stronger and more brutal police force, known as Savak, stricter censorship laws, and the persecution of fundamentalists. Although an increase in Iran's oil revenue during this period brought an economic boom, the money would only go to the rich. Most controversial of the Shah's actions were his anti-Islamic laws, such as banning the Islamic calendar. This angered the fundamentalist Iranian Muslims. An increase in the amount of poverty also caused controversy. There were employment issues throughout the country, and the wealth gap between the nobles and the citizens grew. Resentment for the Shah spread like wildfire. The Shah was also against individual freedom, and those who opposed him were punished severely. Iran was desperate for some form of democracy. While seeing rapid changes in modernization throughout the country, they saw their culture fall apart, as customs that had been kept for centuries were forgotten, replaced by ideas from the West. American lifestyles had come to be imposed as an ideal, the ultimate goal. Americanism was the model. American popular culture, books, magazines, film, had swept over our country like a flood. We found ourselves wondering, is there any room for our own culture? Said one participant in the protest. One of the key people opposed to the Shah's regime was Ayatollah Khomeini, a Shia leader and activist from Qom. On November 4, 1964, he was exiled for criticizing the Iranian government. While living abroad, he urged the citizens to overthrow the government and promised to provide basic needs such as electricity and water for free. He became extremely popular among many Iranians as he promised to return the country back to traditional values. January 7, 1978, the Iranian Revolution had begun. Protests were held across the country against the Shah as demonstrators took to the streets to express their displeasure. One of the events that would trigger the Iranian Revolution was Cinema Rex fire on August 19, 1978. The Cinema Rex building in Abadan was locked from the outside and then set on fire by Islamic militants. The Savak blocked the entrance and forbade anyone to rescue those inside. Many believe the Shah were responsible for this tragedy. Over 470 victims were burned alive. The Shah, alarmed by growing protests, implemented martial law on September 7, 1978, allowing governmental military forces to open fire on citizens. On the next day, September 8, 1978, also known as Black Friday, thousands of people gathered in Gillette Square for a religious demonstration. The orders from the commanders to halt were drowned out by the screams of the suffering citizens fighting for their rights. The Iranian soldiers reacted by firing bullets into the crowd, an event that fueled a chain reaction leading to more demonstrations in the next 4 months. With Islam being a religion where martyrs are praised, Iranians continued to protest despite knowing the consequences. Following the implementation of martial law, protests spread and grew in number. Workers from the Tehran oil refinery joined the protests following Black Friday, and laborers from 5 additional cities followed. In November 1978, 37,000 workers protested at the oil refineries. As Iran was the United States' main supplier for oil, the sudden decrease in oil revenue would lead to the 1979 energy crisis. Meanwhile, Khomeini would send the people of Iran his sermons and messages to give them hope. In Iran, people would carry the messages and spread them across the country. Anyone caught spreading the words of Khomeini would be immediately arrested, but his messages of resistance continued to thrive. Protests grew in number nationwide. Cities such as Tehran, Mashhad, Qom, Shiraz, Isfahan, and Abadan were overtaken by enraged Iranians willing to die for their rights. In January 1979, the Shah fled Iran. He eventually found himself in the US, where he stayed with his wife. For the remaining years of his life, the Shah and his wife traveled from country to country seeking residence. He eventually passed away from cancer in Cairo, Egypt a year later. The Iranian Revolution reshaped Iran's society and its diplomatic relations with other countries. The citizens achieved their goal of taking the Shah out of power, but the revolution would set the nation back by decades.
I think revolution was about replacing dictatorship with a democratic government that respect people's rights and rule the country upon the law. And actually what happened was quite opposite. They replaced dictatorship with religious dictatorship, which is even more dangerous and less flexible compared to the previous one.
When Ayatollah Khomeini returned to Iran on February 1st, 1979, he was acclaimed as the hero of the revolution and the Islamic State's supreme leader. However, Khomeini would prove that he is just as cruel as the Shah. Iran became a strict traditionalist country, with groups like the Morali police tracking down citizens who did not follow the laws of the newly formed government. Wearing hijabs became compulsory for all women, regardless of their religious identity. Symbols of Western culture, such as American movies, were frowned upon, and it became illegal to possess alcohol. During the 1980s, Iran's economy deteriorated due to weakened international relations. After the Shah was admitted into the United States, the two countries' ties became tense. The Iranian Revolution also caused the Iran hostage crisis, in which a group of Iranian students kidnapped 52 Americans in order to force the Shah's return to face punishment. The nation's relationship with the United States deteriorated further, and the reputation of Iran had worsened. Recently, Americans were alarmed at the growth of Iran's nuclear program and uranium industries, fearing the possibility of an attack. Iran was also part of Bush's axis of evil.
Iran aggressively pursues these weapons and exports terror, while an unelected few repress the Iranian people's hope for freedom.
This made Iran the center of attention in Western media. Today, Iranians are more active in protests than ever, as the new generation began to notice the flaws of Iranian society. Over the past few years, the Iranian citizens became aware of the corruption and dictatorship in their government, causing widespread controversy and public outcry. In 2009, a rigged presidential election gave rise to the Green Movement, a fight to abdicate Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Although the revolution had turned out the opposite of what the general population of Iran had wished, they are able to preserve their culture that was slowly falling apart. Not only their culture, but their individual freedom was taken away by the Shah, and they are not allowed to express themselves. The revolution of 1979 was a way for Iranians to stand up for their identity and their nation. This event has had effects that have changed the lives of the millions of citizens of Iran, whether it be their political and religious views or their everyday life. Despite the differences and discrepancies between them, the Iranians proved to be a people able to unite and stand up for their rights against the Shah's oppressive regime.